Welcome to the Football 360 show, coming at you live on X, YouTube. Audio versions are going to be heard on Apple as well as Spotify. And as always, you can catch us on football360show.com and our social medias. Mine is JP Rock MO. Matt is on his phone trying to look his up right now.
Yeah.
On Instagram is JP Rock Scout U.
Instagram, it is Elite Football Academy, and then Elite Football on X.
Right. And on X, it's Football 360 Show, as well as on YouTube as well. And the Gram. And the Gram, I just have to keep, I can't keep up with Matt's reels. The reels are coming at you. If you don't catch the show, you got to catch the reels.
Coming fast
and hard. And of course, everybody loves the reels on Instagram. Wouldn't you say that kids are just like live on Instagram? Well, not live streaming, but they're like on Instagram 24/7.
I would say that of all the different platforms, that one, I think they do a lot of things Snapchat wise, but I think there's a lot of well,
Snapchat's probably replaced the phone. Because kids, and it really kind of blows my mind. It's like, they expect the snaps all day long. I don't understand the snap deal. Did it for a second.
Me either.
Just kind of spy on my kid for a minute.
Uh-huh.
What are you doing on there? And I was like, I was boring.
Yeah.
So I
don't really. That's something that really I never caught on to. But you know what? I would say TikTok. We have quite a few views on TikTok
and Instagram.
Yep, yeah. And there's a good number of people tuning in.
So there is a Football 360 Show TikTok.
It's on the Elite Football one,
okay.
But it's going to migrate to that. But yeah, a lot of those are getting posted on there, and it's really interesting. I'm sure there's some experts out there that could tell you. Sometimes the reels go crazy, sometimes the YouTube shorts go crazy, and then sometimes they don't have any views. And then TikTok, though, is pretty consistent, multiple views. So there's multiple ways to catch it. But usually the idea is look at those reels and shorts and then intrigue you enough to listen to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Instagram and TikTok, that's where they live.
Yes.
They don't watch TV. They don't listen to the radio, really. It's Instagram and TikTok. TikTok is really kind of replaced TV with the young people. And, of course, I do believe we have a Facebook as well.
Yes.
So we got all that
social media.
All that stuff is covered. And the website, of course, Football 360 Show as well. So, things getting ready to gear up. Is Matt selfies himself?
No, that was a picture of you.
Was that a picture of me?
Uh-huh.
Lovely. Because I just spent an hour in hair and makeup.
Well, so that's something too. I think a lot of people like where we shoot this show is like it's a professional studio.
Oh, yeah.
We're in a multi-million-dollar building.
This is bales of hay.
This is a legit studio. We have producer Joe. It's in the other room. He's working hard, looking at us in here, and steering us down the right path. But I think that's what's pretty cool about this is not a fly-by-night deal. Like it's you and I are
sitting on a couch eating pizza.
Yeah, in the middle of a studio in the middle of Chesterfield Valley. It's got a lot of technology in it. It's a really neat building. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. You never know what kind of car you're going to see when you walk into this place.
You never know.
Lamborghini sitting out there at the truck, and then
I don't give out information like that.
It's pretty cool.
I will say this: it's hard not to notice the high-end vehicle.
It is pretty wild,
and then make you reassess your life and be like, "Huh?
Yeah, they're not talking football.
Yeah,
why are these guys driving all these really neat cars?"
Right.
But yeah, I think it's we probably haven't talked much about it, but the studio is really neat, and we're really blessed to be in here and be a part of it, and get to shoot the show and
absolutely.
And do this each week and bring some knowledge to the people.
Absolutely. Although if you're going to do it from your basement, more power to you. That's good as well. So biggest thing going on football wise, I think, is the ruling against the NCAA regarding the NIL.
Yes.
And we've said it before about it being semi-pro football. Well, now it really is, because if there's not. Is the NCAA on its way out? Are they not going to be the governing?
Stages,
absolutely. Yeah. Are they not even going to be the governing body of it anymore? Because what power will they have?
Well, that's what I was saying. 5 years ago, I kept saying to people, I was like, this is the beginning stages. The NCAA is going to be gone. I mean, they may have some new iteration.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is they're becoming powerless, and the control and what they did was being the governing body and really the policemen.
The ability to punish people was their big thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see that. And I've thought about that, that Missouri was in a unique position because of like some of the laws that Missouri had enacted regarding NIL and then the interaction between the school and the kids and when kids could get paid and all of that. But I got to be honest with you, like at some point we'd be very naive not to think that this is just going to be, it's not going to be exclusive to college athletes. High school athletes have every much of the right, because you start thinking about like from the legal perspective, Misha, what the guy or in Illinois, what power do they have to say a kid can or not can't profit from their own name, image, and likeness?
Right.
And the reality of it is what the government just ruled is, they're still going to hear the case, but basically they put a stay on it, and they're not going to be able to say, hey, you guys are in a position to tell people what they can and cannot make, because usually when the government gets involved, they do not like people restricting commerce, and that's what this is all about, right? And so you start restricting free commerce and antitrust laws get involved, it's a much bigger scenario than what just playing football, right? And so the antitrust laws, I'm no expert on it, but do know enough about it and read enough about it to know that as you start to look at younger athletes, just like and the argument was always made, why can a young musician be talented and then profit from their music, and why can a young actor benefit from their music, right? But an athlete doing their art form cannot benefit, right? And so I know there's that strong line between amateur athletics and professional athletics, but the reality of it is they are professional athletes in college now. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Well, yeah, and when the whole NIL deal first broke, I saw people trying to do it with high school kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, well, how's this going to work? And who's going to want this unknown high school? Because I'm talking about I saw it with some 8th graders.
Yeah.
Because people want to make money. People are always out there trying to do stuff. And so somebody came along to these young kids and they're like, hey, I got an NIL deal for you. Okay, well, who knows what it is? Was it just like, just like all the burgers you could want at Bob's Burger Barn, or what are you offering these middle school kids or high school kids?
And kids, but see, the tough thing is now is you have, and the world is so different because you have kids that legitimately have not done a whole lot, but done some cool things online that are profiting from that.
Yeah.
Right. So you take Baby Gronk as an example. He is, he's very annoying when you watch some of the stuff that he does. It's very contrived. It's been proven that his father is involved behind the scenes, pulling the strings, which is a whole nother story for another day, but you feel bad for the kid. But he is clearly profiting from an athletic standpoint, right? I mean,
yeah.
And so it's not unthinkable that someone's going to sign him to an NIL deal, not meaning he's going to be a great football player long-term, but the notoriety and the fame that he already has, he's profiting from it. And so I just think, this world that we're in is fast evolving. People are trying to figure it out. And I'll tell you a story that a real world scenario I had with a kid just the other day. He's playing a local athlete and we've had a number of kids go do this. They go play on a national 7-on-7 team in the off season. We have plenty of guys that have played on our Midwest Boom national team. And I can tell you this, short of Adidas just covering the travel to get out there for all the athletes, that's it, right? They're not paying them money to play. They're not doing that. They're just going and playing that weekend and seeing if they can win or not. But there are teams that are paying kids to play 7v7. And so I said to the kid,
there's going to be more of that.
I just said to him, I said, hey, listen, have you signed anything? He's like, oh, no, I don't think I signed anything. Or I said, well, you got to be careful because, you're still young, so you can't legally sign, you're not 18, but, if someone signs something on your behalf, a legal guardian or a parent, there's such thing as clawbacks. There's things where we've seen instances where athletes have signed something to get a short-term nominal amount of money, like $10,000 to $15,000 to $30,000. And then there's stipulations and fine print tied to that money and that what they gave them, right? Very few people are going to give you something for free of great value and then expect nothing in return, right? So these guys are, going touring around. They're getting paid to play 7v7 in the off season. And the issue becomes, what did you sign your name to? What is that involving? What are you doing and why are you doing it? Right. So at the end of the day, I think that's a really tough scenario because a lot of times kids don't know, the families don't know, and they think these people are acting on their best, interest when really they're acting on their own self-interest, right? And so they're trying to dominate that market with this young studs and getting them through, 7v7 football. And unfortunately, I think, and then they do it at some of the larger institutions that are the national level high school football teams. I know for a fact there's, a $70,000 education is free and they claw money back because they're tied to an agency. When you get to the pros, there's a way to get some of that money and, recoup some of that money. So people just need to be very careful. And, my advice would be is always have a lawyer look at it and read it over, because if you don't, you sign it, you're of age, or the person that signs on your behalf, the legal guardian or whoever it might be, you can really put yourself in a predicament from an earnings perspective down the line.
No kidding.
Which is sad that we're even having that conversation, right? I mean, just unthinkable. But again, who is going to give you that amount of money or that favor and all those things and not expect something in return, right? And they're not a major corporation. A Nike, Adidas, those guys, yes, they may bring you in for the weekend. They use the photo shoot. They're doing that. That's part of a marketing campaign that's written off as a marketing expenditure. Nothing other than the free gear you get. There's nothing really exchanged, right? That other side of the coin where they're giving you hard dollars. I mean, that is a very tricky world to live in. And I think a lot of people are just naive to it because no one's really been through it at that level. Right. We talked about it. When they go to the NFL, there's rules and parameters set with agents. Like there's rules about what they can and cannot do and when they can do it. So I just think people need to be very careful. Not that every athlete in high school is going to be in that scenario. I mean, that means you're an elite level guy if you're in that scenario, but you definitely got to be careful.
Yeah. I mean, do you see the 7-on-7 just becoming agents and attorneys and corporations?
I mean, I think it's a perfect venue to gain access in the off season to kids, because in season you can't do it with the high schools. It's too close knit with the high school coaches. The beauty of football is that you have these long training cycles and you have a short season, but the tough thing is that you have this long off season where the kids are away from their team. They're still at school and doing stuff, but they're doing other things and they're not with their team. And I think that's what makes it problematic. And so I could very well see, 7-on-7 being the main way that they get access. And it's a lot of the skill guys, right? The quarterbacks, receivers, defensive backs, running backs. That's who they want. Big name guys.
Yeah. I mean, that's some of the national ones that you talk about. That's who that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is people that are, agents, attorneys,
Well, and these kids, like we have them on our team when they're 7th and 8th or 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and then are going into their senior year, and then suddenly the ones when they get all these offers, they're the ones that it's like the rite of passage. Like, oh, I've been selected to come do this, and yes, that's great because they're trying to assemble the best kids. But again, take a huge step back and ask yourself, why would they give me all this free stuff? What is in it for them? Am I just that good? Do they just want to be associated with me? Usually there's a give and take and whether it's an NIL deal for marketing, right? Like, there's Brady Cook has a deal with Emo's Pizza. There's money being exchanged, but they also get to use his likeness in videos and commercials and pictures and social media posts. So it's a win-win for both, right? There's recognition on his front. He brings some, cachet with himself. And then they obviously are trying to sell pizzas and other food. So I think that's a win-win, right? That's very obvious that they're doing that. And they do it all the time. Joe Montana's, still selling Skechers sneakers on his, Super Bowl ads and things like that, right? I mean, so pro athletes and college athletes now, there's nothing wrong with guys, using their information and their likeness to sell products. But on the flip side, what are you selling when you're going to a 7v7 tournament and someone's paying you money? Or going to a showcase camp or going to, who knows what else is going on. But that one just comes to mind because you see it this time of year a lot.
Yeah.
And it started happening about 2 years ago.
It did. And I have not seen any major benefit for the players who have gone and played on the national teams.
None.
Have you?
No, because what are you going to gain? You already got the offers. Like other than playing with other guys that you might go to school with. But again, I've not seen that really be the case either, but I think, from that perspective, like getting on the national stage with the OT7 tournaments and things like that, like, maybe there's some name and image likeness stuff there. And maybe there's just building your brand, right? Getting to get on TV, but I don't.
But see, are they getting on TV? I mean, I know there are guys
YouTube.
that are going on. Well,
yeah, it's on a YouTube broadcast. But yeah, OT7, to my knowledge, like what they're doing is that like those events are very made for social media, right? And YouTube. So
is there a 7-on-7 channel on YouTube?
There's a OT7.
Is it really?
Yeah, there's where they broadcast their events. So and then you go and they have announcers. It's a really well done production, but it's made for, taking pictures and
that's where all the best shows are.
Yeah,
on YouTube.
So ours is.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
That's what.
But I think it's changing fast. There's a lot of sharks out there. There's probably some very well-meaning people. I know some guys that do NIL, some attorneys that are just good guys that are professional attorneys that understand how the legal system works and how to protect their clients from getting taken advantage of. I think there's plenty of those guys out there. But I think at the same time, it's not like the NFL with the players union where they can protect. Like, when an NFL player gets a contract, I've witnessed this. I've had guys sign, believe it or not, sign their NFL contracts in my living room, at my dining room table before, right? So I've been involved. I've seen it. So what happens is those guys get that contract, they sign it, it goes to the NFLPA, they overread it to make sure that there was nothing put in there that shouldn't have been put in there according to their rules, right? And their collective bargaining agreements. So like they double check to make sure as well that it fits the parameters. That's not going on with high school and college athletes, to my knowledge. The NCAA schools supposedly are supposed to check through the deals, but I would be willing to bet that their legal teams are not fully up to speed on everything that needs to be going on, because this is very new to them as well, right? Unless they're bringing in new legal staff, right, to operate it.
Well, look, they're losing power as we speak.
Yeah.
And their response to trying to gain power back is they want to go to Congress.
Mm-hmm.
They want the federal government to back them, give them the iron fist to bring it down on these kids wanting to make some money.
Right. And so the tough thing is going to be is like at the end of the day, like if you're making money on it, the government is not going to like step in and say, hey, this is a bad thing for all of us, because it's commerce, right? The government benefits from commerce. Like there's tax, those guys are getting taxed, that money's flowing from hand to hand. They get their cut. It's a good thing. Before it was all flowing through the NCAA. And I don't know, is the NCAA a nonprofit? I would assume. They just like the NFL was until about 8 years ago, they were a nonprofit. So right before the Rams left, all that stuff, they were still they were operating as a nonprofit entity. So, which the government doesn't benefit much from that at all. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I know that the NCAA finally, what they do, they outlawed the picture taking, and then there's no cookies or any gifts. What is it? Was it cookies and gifts on beds?
What power do they have to stop that?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? That's what this lawsuit brought by Tennessee and Virginia have done. And quite frankly, in an election year, they're not going to support the NCAA. None of the Congress isn't going to support them, because the NCAA is not a popular, governing body.
No, they're not.
And so they're not gonna step up and be like, yeah, we got your back.
Because every school has been punished by the NCAA one time or the other. And so there's still disdain for them, right? And, I think people for the longest time too try to figure out like, what is their role in this? Like how do they get this grip on these colleges, right? And like, I know you probably watched a documentary a long time ago where they started talking about the lawsuit where some young man got hurt. And it was very, very strategic in how the guy was in Kansas City that came up with it. the term student athlete, right? We hear that as like a term of like, that's like really good, right? Like, but it actually was a legal term to separate work comp and employment issues with the college, so they didn't have to pay for this poor kid that got paralyzed, right? And it was back in the, again, I think he played at SMU. So, those types of things, when you hear that, and then you hear like how it's been spun to this tale of student athletes, and it sounds so dignified, and you realize like, no, that actually is a term that has allowed them to skirt the system and make a ton of money off of athletes over the years. Makes you wonder.
It's legalese.
Yeah, very legalese. Yeah. So, but I don't know. I think not a crystal ball guy, but I think the next 5 to 10 years, the NCAA is going to look way different or be gone.
Oh, 100%. If you want to, butt heads against the NCAA, now is the time to do it. This year would be the time to do it. And I don't know how, outside of government intervention, I don't know how they get it back.
Right. There are some guys in Congress, I think, that had, pushed change some of the rules. But again, it starts getting into legal areas where, well, why would you preclude these people from this when everyday citizens are allowed to do this all day long?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, just because they play sports. So I think that's where it becomes really, really dangerous. And so
it's like anything else. Once you let it happen, good luck getting it
back.
Can't
put the cat back in the bag.
Exactly.
So
it's a good luck with that. So, and the baby Gronk thing, I view him as entertainment and an influencer. I don't see him as, a guy who, scores 30 touchdowns and people admire him. And so, hey, we want to offer you this deal.
Yeah.
The whole influencer thing is just wild anyway.
Yes. It'll be curious to see how he does over the years, right? Like how he progresses. My guess is he's overgrown for his age.
Yeah.
And some of the video and some of the stuff he does is actually pretty good for his age group. Like he actually can play football, but then you watch and you realize like, yeah, he's just a grown man playing against a bunch of kids. And then as we've talked about, 16, all that stuff starts to even out. And you start to realize like that's the guy versus that guy used to be a guy.
Exactly. That's why it's hard to get too up about somebody who's the, 6'5", 8th grader.
Yeah.
Who can do all this. Now, a lot of times you do have guys like that. Like I remember Coney Ely. I remember seeing him in 8th grade, and he was already 6'4", 6'5", and playing football and could just, drill the ball the length of the court from one end to the other and dunk it. And it's like, okay, well, that's pretty impressive. That's going to be hard to lose.
That school, those skills will appreciate.
Yes.
The guys that you're really wary of are the guys that are got facial hair or starting to look more masculine in the face, a little bit more mature. And they're in like 7th or 8th grade.
Right.
Those are the ones that typically do not end up panning out. Like they just don't. And so that doesn't mean that they can't be a good high school football player.
Right.
But there was a guy who was talking about internet sensation. Cody Paul was his name. He was a running back, and he was one of the first guys to kind of blow up really big. He was a running back in the day, and I forgot where he was from, maybe Texas. And he absolutely, his brother put his highlight film online, and it just caught fire. And this kid was really good and dominant. And then, he got to high school. The problem is he never got taller than 5'6". I think that's somewhere in that range.
Yep.
And he had a really decent high school career, but was over recruited because of his size. And he's kind of one of those guys though that kind of fell by the wayside because people lost interest because he didn't go to a big college. He went to like Chadron State, and he did well. He actually did really well for his size, and he was a hard runner. But then you juxtapose him to like Danny Woodhead, who was there at the same college, and their stats were just totally different. The guy that got to go to the NFL was just a totally different creature than a guy that was just a really quality high school and then a quality college player.
Right. And
I don't know that people quite understand like how different those NFL guys are. Like one of the guys we're going to have on the show, Michael Neese, he's back. He's a lineman with the Detroit Lions. And you can look at him in our facility. He's over there doing like skipping and doing sprints and snapping balls. And if you ask someone, you go, hey, what do you think that guy weighs? They're like, 265, 270. I'm like, no, he's 305. His body looks different, right? And he moves differently, but he looks like he is 265 and he's 305. And he runs like he's 265, but he's 305. And I think that is one of the toughest things for people to they don't quite appreciate how athletic those guys are. and how big and strong they really are, because they all look the same on the field because they're playing against guys just like themselves. So, but yeah, he's one that is fun to watch because he is a hard worker, and he definitely does not look like a gigantic guy. And then
he's
you get close to him and you're like, oh man, he's good size. So, but he's extremely athletic. And I think that's the thing. Everybody in that league is athletic. Every single one of them. Like, they are all uber athletes. So, and that's why they get paid. Yeah. They get paid and get to extend their careers in the game.
Yeah. I mean, people don't understand the difference between a quality or good high school football player and somebody who's a college prospect either. And you see that all the time. You know, highlight films, everybody looks good. I've rarely seen a bad highlight film. Some guys do put bad highlight films out there, but you rarely see those, you know. And so you have these computer screen scouts who want to write information and stuff on. By the way, if you're going to write stuff about kids, know the geography of the state. That's always helpful. If you it makes you look really stupid if you don't know where certain towns are and what part of the state they're in. But not everybody understands, you know, the difference of what it takes to be separated from being a good high school football player, or even a superior high school football player. But that doesn't mean you're a high level college prospect.
And people get that confused all the time. All the time. There's certain attributes you look at kids. Like, so when you and I are talking about kids, size comes into the factor, right? That's definitely an issue like that has to be spoken about, because there are certain sizes and then speed parameters, you know, movement parameters that colleges put on their groups that they know that you're going to fit into there, right? You know, it's very rare that you're going to be someone that's too far outside the norm that they're going to accept in, because they just don't have to. They have too many other people they're going to find that fit those parameters to bring in, and it's, you know, you don't see a lot of guys that look very different from each other in position groups, right? Like all the linebackers look pretty similar.
Yeah.
All the D linemen look fairly similar. I mean, the edge guys look similar. The interior guys look similar. Your guards, your tackles, they look like them. Their position groups look like guards should look, and tackles look like they should look. You know, I think that's the hard thing is that sometimes it is very aesthetic, right? But it's also the aesthetics are proven in the game to predict kind of how guys will play. And so, like, you could be a really good high school football player and statistically do very well and not be a great high school or be a college football player. You could you could definitely be a guy.
You can set state records and not be, you know, you could be the all-time leading rusher of a state, not be a college football player.
100%.
And that's happened a lot over the years. I don't think people realize that. Even though your average fan will be like, oh, you got to see this guy, you got to see this guy, which is why I like to see people in person. I like to see them in game. I like to see the totality of a game. I like to see them work out. I like to see them, you know, train. I like to look at the entirety of it to make the best possible, you know, judgment on that person, as opposed to showing up on Friday night, or even worse, looking at their highlight film.
Because I got to tell you, you're right. You can go watch people's highlight films and sell yourself into believing, like, my God, this guy's really good.
Unreal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my trick I like to do is, and I know some college coaches do this as well, I watch the first, you know, say 30 seconds to a minute, and then I skip to the very end, right? And if the quality of play is already slipping on their highlight film, then you know the rest of that, you know, their game film is probably not as dialed in as you would think, right? And so, you know, what are they doing? The ball's moving away from them. What are they doing? You know, when things don't go their way, all those things, and you can see that when you're watching it live, right?
Yes.
It's very easy to see.
What are you doing when you're not the focal point of the offense or defense?
Right. And so many kids and a lot of adults, you know, parents believe like, hey, this kid's a guy, right? Like this guy is a guy. You should see him. He dominates every Friday. Well, when you get to college, every one of those kids was a guy that dominated on Friday. But I would argue most of them dominated at a different level, right? And even if they weren't the guy that was like the guy that stood out so much that you're like, oh, that guy is the best player.
Mm.
There's some attributes that he has that the other kids don't have that will eventually come into. That's why he's projectability, right? And you project him to say, this guy's going to fit here, right? And so I think watching the game and being a fan versus being someone that evaluates talent and builds talent there's a major chasm between that. And I think that, there's a lot of experts and a lot of people think that this is a great, easy way to watch kids, like go to a Friday night game and they won by 50 points. Okay. But who'd they play?
That's it. Competition.
Who's the competition?
Yep.
Like, what are they doing? From a quarterback perspective, I'm looking at how accurate are they, right? Because accuracy is everything. That will carry you through your entire career. Judgment obviously is another huge component. Does he panic? Does he just take off outside the pocket? And does he make good reads, right? You don't necessarily need to know what the play was. You need to see guys throwing balls. Because I see a lot of times guys will thread balls and you're like, oh, it's a great throw. Well, in my mind, that's a late throw that's probably at the next level is going the other way, right? So guys that are just, I go back to watching guys highlight films and you look like Drew Lock was a guy, if you watch his highlight film in high school, predominantly a ton of deep balls. They were running a lot of wheel concepts out of the slots and they were just chucking the ball deep, right? Like a very good, strong arm. But as you start to progress and you look at that, and he's a hell of a quarterback in college, right? Did a great job. But if you look back into his film, I remember watching him because there was a ton of hype around him. And so, which is ironic, later in this season, he had a huge 2 plays where he chucked the ball deep down the side to the edge of the field. If you go back and watch him through his career, that was his money. That was where that's where he made money, right? The issue is as you get to the NFL, you have to be able to drive that ball to the middle of the field. I listened to a thing the other day. Kurt Warner was talking about Drake May, Caleb Williams, and one of the other top, Michael Penix. And he was talking about how he analyzed them. And his point was there was a lot of quick game, right, in the college that you see that you do not see in the NFL. And a lot of the little quick screen game as well that you do not see in the NFL because those guys are too disciplined. They blow it up. He's like, they do not throw the ball very well intermediately down the field. Like they don't. Like he's like watching these guys, they're going to struggle if they don't learn to pick that up. I would argue those are things that should have been learned in high school and then should have been pressed in college to help develop those guys. But again, the guy that's on the other side of the sideline, making $20 million or 15, whatever Lincoln Riley's making, he's the king of running bubble game and throwing quick stuff and running like quick reads, right? Some of that stuff they do in the NFL, but that's not how the primary focus of the offense and the primary mover of the chains, right? And so I think those guys, some of them, as we've devolved in the game, these guys are really good show ponies, but they're not as accurate as you think they are because once they get beyond 10 to 15 yards, it drops drastically. And if you're an NFL guy, you should be accurate up to 25, right? And I'm talking accurate driving the ball, edge of the field, middle of the field, all those throws, right? Yeah. And so that starts when they're young. Yeah. It starts when they're young. You can tell who the accurate throwers are and the inaccurate throwers. You can tell who the guys that rely on having really good receivers and the guys that don't have great receivers that really have to put the ball where it's supposed to be.
Right. And with Drew, like I first saw Drew as an 8th grader, right? And so I was still at scout.com. And so I had him, I went through the top player in every class. Drew was the number 1 guy. So he was that guy way back then. He was that guy as a 9th grader. I did his first interview with him and was very nervous. It was funny.
Like you show me.
Skinny little guy, right? Wasn't physically developed yet, but he had that ability. And that is really something. And you can tell that when they're young. Carson Boyd, another guy like that. I was just going through stuff and Carson Boyd came to the elite combine as a 7th grader. Right, and man, he might have been the most accurate quarterback back then. Yeah, his ball placement, he could put the ball any place he wanted on every throw that there was.
And that is the difference between a good quarterback and an elite level quarterback. Yep. Accuracy is everything. Now, I will say that is like when our style of training and how we train our quarterbacks, pretty much the entire focus is hitting what you're aiming at, right? We're incessant about where their eyes are. We're incessant about where their feet are. And it's just a beating of the drum. And you start to watch, right? And you can see, I will tell you, There's a couple 7th graders we got right now that you watch them throw when they're with the high schoolers, and you're like, oh, he's just as accurate. No, he's more accurate. He's more accurate, right? There's 8th graders that are really accurate.
You got a really good group of young quarterbacks.
There are some really
You've
good
got
ones.
some really good.
Yeah,
I've stood there and observed. You got some really good 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th grade, and then you look at like that group that's the seniors this year, the rising seniors. That was that group a number of years ago that are very good, very accurate, but they've worked at it. And accuracy is a perishable skill. Like you have to continually work on it, right? And it works. Like you can get rid of half the errors in a game by just being able to keep your eyes where you want the ball to go, right? We're not talking about staring a target down. We're talking about taking dead aim and throwing the ball and hitting the guy exactly where we're going to hit him. Like, so years ago, we had a 7-on-7 tryout. This is like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago. And we had some guys from Chicago were down. So we went afterwards. We went to eat. I only knew 2 of the guys. The other 5 guys that were there evaluating kids, I didn't know them. So we're eating lunch, and this guy's like,
barbecue.
I
was there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he says, he looks at me, he goes, hey, like, what's the deal with all these quarterbacks here? So like, again, I'm going to get like, what are you going to talk about our quarterbacks? You know, he's like, man, that was crazy. He's like, in Chicago, we had like 50 quarterbacks try out. He's like, here, you guys had 12. He's like, all 12 were better than the 50 we had there. He's like, it was not even close. So he had a question. He said, and then finally I said, oh, well, I work with the quarterbacks. And so then we started talking about, he's like, well, how do you teach them to throw back shoulder fades? And how do you teach them to throw those? Because there was like a drill where they were doing fades and our quarterbacks were eating it alive. Yep. And I looked at him and I said, oh, we don't even talk about throwing back shoulder fades. Like, I mean, we do, but we don't train that into them. We put them in scenarios where they're looking at something. So like if a defender overplays it, they put it to the back. If the guy underplays it, put it over the top, right? The guy gets him, beat him over the top, throw it into the hole, let him run to it. So it all is about what presents itself. So whatever the quarterback sees is what he throws. And so that all goes back to the.
And that's better, don't you think, in real-time situation,
right,
as opposed to you standing there trying to go through that drill.
Right. And so your brain is just simply reacting, but then you take it back a step further. If you don't have the footwork, it does not matter what your brain sees, right? And your eyes see.
So important. I was just thinking about that the other day as I was evaluating guys, how important footwork is.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, there's so many bad habits that you see online too. Like, I mean, our quarterback coaches, we have 6 quarterback coaches now, and guys will send us, we'll send each other messages about watching, and it's so prevalent. All the different, everybody's an expert online. And the sad thing is I see so much stuff that over the last 24, 25 years, I've learned those mistakes. I know that you don't want to do that. And you see people like you're just pushing these bad techniques and things that they think will work that don't work. And it's sad because, a kid's going to learn that, and that's going to be how he throws, through puberty and into high school, and he probably won't shake those bad habits. And the problem is it's simple things that could be corrected, and they're not going to correct it when you get to high school. They're not going to correct it when you get to college. They'll find someone else that knows how to do it.
Right. And you can have the strongest arm in the world. You can have pretty good accuracy. If you don't have the good footwork, it's not going to translate well. You don't have the technique. You don't have the good footwork. You'll do well in high school probably, but you're not going to keep going up to that next level.
Oh, there's tons of kids in high school that are really good high school football players or quarterbacks, like really, really good, like serviceable guys.
And people wonder why didn't they get Mizzou and Illinois and everybody offering them?
Just watch the film, right? But that's the problem. You're not watching the film through the lens of someone that knows what they're looking at.
Well, you're not watching the totality of their work.
And a great example is Brady Cook. He's a great example. The number of people that I had to bite my tongue with when he was in high school and then going into college, people were shocked when he got a Mizzou offer. Oh, I've coached against him since we were in middle school. He's not that. Yeah, he's not this. He's not that. Well, they're not looking at what we're looking at. We're looking at something that's going to progress. We know that he's got these skills. He possesses this ability at this age, and he's competitive as all get out. He's intelligent. There's a lot of other things that go into it, but you can start to pick those guys out. And so, yeah, when they asked me about him, I 100% said, hey, look, this is someone you need to be, evaluating and pull the trigger on. And so I think there's just a lot of people like that. And there's a lot of kids that can just flat out play that will never play another down. One, because they might not want to, but two, probably because they don't have the skill set to play at that level. So, but as it pertains to like the recruiting, get to different camps so you can see what the colleges see and think about you if you have the desire to play, right? Because they're going to help tell you what level you should go to. And this is a weird game. You're not in control. Like so many people are so used to being in control of like I play on this baseball team, or I'm on this basketball team and I do this and all the things the people move around, right? Well, I'm going to go to this 7-on-7 team if these guys do this and these guys are jerks. They're not using me to my fullest ability. Take a step back and hear what you're being told by people and read the tea leaves, right? Like, hey, maybe you aren't as good as you think you are and you got to work at it. You actually got to train and develop. But if you start to kind of like look at the pathway of what those colleges are telling you and you're getting good advice from coaches like, hey, you should do this, you should do that. Oh, good job. You should come back to our camp. Or we have a junior day, come on down, or whatever it might be. Those are signs that they're interested. If you go and they don't notice you, it is possible they missed you. 9 times out of 10, if you're really good and what they're looking for, they don't know. 9.9 times out of 10, they do not miss you. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
Oh, yeah.
Like you don't show up at camps and ball out and then them not.
No, I tell kids all the time that, if you're good enough, they're going to find you. And now you have more of an opportunity than ever because even if they do miss you, you go to a college and then you can always transfer up.
Yeah, but I'm not a D2 player. I should be playing at D1.
You are where you wind up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you are where you wind up.
I think that's
don't let that end it for you.
Correct. If that's the point. If you really want to do it, right? You can eat guys' lunch it's a war of attrition. So like, yeah, there's going to be a ton of guys that go to Division I that will never see the field, right? If you're at a D2 and you're getting clock and you're playing and you're starting to build a name for yourself, you can leapfrog the guys that you did not get noticed, that they had favor in front of you that went to the D1 that maybe were a stretch or maybe someone missed on them. And now you can come in, or maybe they're just in a bad situation where they're not going to get on the field. And you've seen it 1,000 times. I have too. You have an All-American coming out of high school. They get to the Division I team. They're this and that. They sit behind a guy that's really good. That kid doesn't work as hard. They become a little stale in the coach's mind. Coach is looking to replace him and get someone new in there.
Yeah,
it happens, right? Like It happens all the time. So I just think you have to be in a position where you are willing, if you really love working and playing the game of football, if you don't go to the level you think you should go to, and you think you really are that guy and you have the desire, then you stick it out and you keep playing, because there's never been a better time to rise up and go to a different level and a different program.
Yeah, it's changed. In some respects, you don't have as much opportunity as you once had. Coming out of high school, you probably don't. With the transfer portal, you don't have as much opportunity.
Yeah.
There are guys who just keep dropping down. But yet at the same time, it works itself out because you do have that opportunity to go into a smaller school and then working your way back up to where you feel you belong or where you actually belong.
And, I will say one thing that we've talked about this, we're starting to see a little bit more true activity with high school kids that we weren't seeing 2-3 years ago, right? Because the 6th year, the extra bonus year guys this is their last year. They're done, right? I mean, most of those guys they're done. The vast majority. There may be a few cases of guys that are holding over, but the vast majority are 24 now and it's time to go.
Yeah.
So, but I think as that regulates and as it comes back to normal numbers of kids on teams, right? Meaning like the right mix of freshmen, of redshirt freshmen, of true freshmen,
mm-hmm.
and then sophomores, juniors, seniors, you're going to have those 5 classes rather than 6 classes of kids. You're going to have some ability to, be recruited out of high school the way that it normally has. I mean, just for instance, the last 3 groups of classes of quarterbacks, it's been non-existent for high school quarterbacks getting recruited out of St. Louis. I mean, there's been guys that go play college football, but certainly not at the level. Now we have, let's say, 6 guys that are Division I level. Most of them have offers to go play Division I football. So I think that's a great sign for those guys. But again, that's the 5 or 6 that are going to do it. 7 of them maybe do it. There's other guys that are good too that are probably have to drop down. And that doesn't mean you can't leapfrog those guys at some point, but you have to be willing to check your attitude and swallow your pride and go play what's being offered to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also depends on if you take the thought process of, okay, this is me, this is where I'm at. I've leveled off, I'm good. Or do you want to keep working? Do you aspire to bigger or better things? That's why I always keep saying, keep building, because you don't want to stop now just because you got an offer. Okay, I'm going to play D1 ball. You got to keep building. What's your next goal? What next level do you want to reach? Do you want to start? Do you want to just be a cool backup and get a lot of chicks and enjoy the parties? Or do you want to start? Do you want to be all conference? Do you want to go to the NFL? And those are the guys that really separate themselves.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yep.
I was talking to a kid that's a junior, going to be a senior next year, so a rising senior. And he's got some offers, Division I offers. And he said, I'm going to keep working to see what else can come from this. Right. And to your point, it's, because when you're in that offer phase and all you want is an offer, then you get an offer and a lot of guys just slack off. But then you're like, well, maybe I can get a bigger offer. So that's, there's always that pushing, right? It's no different being in business. It's like, hey, we did this last year.
Yeah.
We're going to push. We're going to do better next year, right? We're going to do better. Every year you got to improve. And so if you're not doing that as a player, the game will certainly pass you by because there's plenty of kids that are going to want to get better than you. And so, again, what are the things that you should be concentrating on? So many of these guys are concentrating on what? The end result, which is the offer and then playing in college.
I've made it.
But they're not looking at what am I doing sleep-wise? What am I doing training-wise from my running perspective? What am I doing from my lifting perspective? What am I doing to learn the game in the off season, right? What am I doing to better myself as just a human being, like from a faith and from a just being a good steward, citizen, right? What are you doing in that? Being a better son, all those things, being a better student, obviously. Those are a holistic approach to becoming a better human being and better football player that will benefit you down line. It will also make you more marketable for when you're doing NIL if they want to deal with good people. So those are things that athletes need to focus on and not be so focused on, I need to get the offer, right? If I had $1 for every time I had someone say, well, why did he get offered when I'm better than him, right? It is a dangerous game to play because you're always going to be unimpressed by the other guy getting the offer because in your mind, you are better than them.
Which, by the way, make sure that those are legit offers you have before you announce them. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's kiss of death. You want to start offering. I can tell you. I will tell you this. I saw a kid last year.
Yeah.
Put out an offer from a school that was a very large, well-respected institution that does not recruit our area. You can count on one hand how many kids hold offers from it.
I always know. Always the red flag goes up. I'm like,
that's strange.
Yeah.
And then, I just saw the other day that young man is still unsigned, right?
Sure.
So if you have an offer that's at the SEC level or a Big Ten level, right? And then last spring, and then you had a good senior year and you still have nothing, right? And you're, maybe a little undersized for the position and just a hell of a high school football player.
Right.
I think it's hard pill to swallow when you realize that you are not that guy. And let me tell you, do yourself a favor, get to a spring game, get to a spring practice, right? I got something on that too. Get to a spring game, get to a spring practice because you can then see those guys or get to games in the fall. But do not fall into the trap of looking at these guys because it happens every single time. Oh, I'm better than him. They're watching these guys warm up. I'm better than him. Oh my God, I could come here and start tomorrow. Wait till you're there and wait till you see how it's different when you're there and you respect it a whole lot more when you realize it's hard to understand when you're on that sideline. You can easily project yourself throwing the ball, catching the ball, blocking, whatever it might be. It all looks the same because they're all similar size. There's a lot of parity. You do not move at the speed they move at. You're a high school football player. You're not moving. You're moving at a speed that's probably better than most of the high school kids. But we shed all those guys off. They're gone. Now you have to move against all the other guys that are just like you, and let's see how good you are then. And that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? But so a question, if you were offered to go to a spring practice or a junior day, something like that, or you have an opportunity to be seen and actually put your wares in front of people like a combine or a showcase, what would you do? What do you think an athlete should do?
I mean, junior days, if you've never been to a college, you want to just say, hey, I experienced that. That's great. It does nothing for you. It's a meet and greet, right?
100%.
I don't know if you've ever seen a meet and greet. Maybe, you'll be at the mall. Hey, Sally here is going to put out an album. She wants to meet you. And so you walk by the table, you get the photo and you shake the hands, and then nothing ever comes of it. That's basically what junior day is. It's really and I'm not trying to knock them. If you're going to go to them, that's fine. But really, it's a cattle call, right? They want to get a look at you. They're going to shake your hand. Now, I've heard from a lot of guys over the years, they go to a junior day, and I'm like, how was it? What happened? Well, they gave us a drink and we sat there and we watched a basketball game. I'm like, oh, what did the coaching staff say? Well, I didn't talk to the coaching staff.
There's 150 kids there.
That tells you everything. But guess what? They're going to they're fishing. They're going to throw out a wide net to try to see what they have. And if they see you, and if on the hoof, they like the way you look, or they're like, oh, wow, look at that kid. That's a big kid. Oh, he's physically developed. Then they're going to come over and say, hi, how you doing? Are you mom? Are you dad? But if you're just a guy and you don't stand out to them physically, or they don't know about you and have offered you ahead of time, you might just be having a nice trip to a college town and, maybe enjoying a basketball game. So, whereas opposed to if there's something you can work towards, find out where you're at, get some actual exposure, of course, that's going to be preferential.
Okay.
And a spring game, watch ESPN.
Yeah, right. And so the end of the day, like the coaches are there at a spring game or a junior day visit or a game day visit. They have, most of them have a job to do as well on that day. They have other things they're doing during that time period.
Free tickets.
If you go to them and there's a guy that you'll see, there's probably 5 to 8 kids there that are the dudes that they're looking at, and
they're all sitting in the same row.
They will be together. The coaches are the ones talking to them. They have the hosts around them. They have people around them that are treating them a little differently because they are the guys that they're really targeting, right? They're the ones that they want to know more.
And the other guys are sitting 30 rows behind you.
Yeah. And so it's just a different experience. And so point being is if you have not had a ton of communication or feel like through your high school coach telling you, hey, they're really interested in you, things like that, just be wary of it. It's a great experience, but I also would not cut your experience short of going and being seen, say skipping a combine or a showcase where that data is then going to go back to that coaching staff. Because you got to think of it in these terms. They don't have any updated data on you since last summer. If you can give them updated data now, right, that you've been working and things are looking better and you're a better prospect than you were this time of this year than last year, your odds of being recruited off of that information are far better than showing up and just smiling and shaking hands. Because short of being a guy that shows up that's a stud already, that's already getting recruiting attention, you're just another guy that's there. I mean, I hate to say it. That's just the way it works.
It's true. And if you want to impress them, it's not going to be showing up and shaking their hand and, getting a cup or anything with the school name on it. It's going to be going to their camp. If you have a choice between going to a junior day and you don't have offers from them or going to their camp, you always want to go to their camp. You always want to be doing something that's going to benefit you and help you develop as a player or show your ability as a player, as opposed to just showing up and hanging out, especially if it's far away.
Correct. So, yeah, I just think that's a question that comes up all the time. We have parents ask about it. So, you can get your name on a junior day list invite. You can get yourselves on game day invite list. It's pretty easy.
Free tickets. That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, you can get free tickets.
Yeah.
You're a high school football player. You could pretty much get free tickets to most any college game as a high school football player, especially in state.
Yep.
But you can also reach out to other schools and tell them you're a prospect. They all have a process for signing those tickets up, and then you go in a little bit before Yeah, it's an unofficial, so you have to pay for your own food, things like that. But they can provide you the tickets per NCAA rules, and
I
the way it goes.
always remember sitting in the press box up at Mizzou, say, and looking down, and you would know where I would know where the recruits were, and you could always tell who the guys were from just the guys who were just enjoying a free game. Based on the placement, based on the attention and stuff like that. And the guys who were just there weren't getting any attention. They lost interest unless they were just automatically Tiger fans.
It is really a hard pill to swallow, though, when you get there and you realize, and so you can use it as one way or the other. You can take it as, oh man, I'm not really this level, or you can use it and say, man, this is never going to happen to me again.
Right.
I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to do all the things necessary to get better. Or acknowledge, swallow the hard pill and acknowledge, like, maybe I'm not the prototypical guy for what they're looking for. If you get there and other linebackers are 6'2" and you're 5'10", probably not going to overcome that one.
Yep.
You're just not gonna. I mean, and you could be the best player ever.
Same thing with showing up and getting your photo taken and all that stuff. If you're not like everybody else there, then chances are you're just a friend of somebody who they really like, or you just got mixed up.
I'll give you a quick little story. This summer, so this summer I took my little guy the last 2 years or 3 years, whatever it might be. I think maybe 3 years, to the Mizzou does a little summer camp. Okay,
they do multiple.
So they do one in St. Louis. They maybe one in Kansas City, and then they do one in Columbia.
I'm just talking. All of them are on campus now, but they do multiple.
Well, I'm talking about the little kid ones, like just like the junior.
Oh yeah.
So this is
the ones that don't count.
Kindergarten through 8th grade.
Right.
Well, I can tell you though, at the end of it, you will see the coaches walking over to kids that pique their interest. Okay. Well, how do I know it? I watched it happen. But what they do at the end of the camp, I always find very interesting. They put all the first graders, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, respective grades. They do a foot race. Let's say it could be, there's probably 1,000 kids at the Columbia camp, right? Whatever, however many kids. So 100 kids per grade or 125 kids per grade. They race them in 2 heats. They pick out the fastest one, and then they peel it down to about 20 kids. They're filming it. They know who these kids are. They're starting to identify, first grade, second grade, okay. But a 7th and 8th grader, those guys are recruitable athletes in a couple of years, right? So you can start to kind of pick who those kids are. They pick the fastest couple. Yeah. It is really interesting. Yeah. I've watched it happen. And the coaches, every position coach is out on the field. I don't think that's an accident. Yeah, it's fun. Their families are there. It's a good time. Am I saying it's a recruiting event? Absolutely not. Am I saying that a coach is always a coach, no matter where he's at? Yes, he is 100%. Just like you're a scout, wherever you're at, you see a kid. Hey, what do? You play football? It's in us, right? As a coach and an evaluator. So it's something you do. They're doing that even with little kids. Again, if you're not where you need to be in 7th grade and they don't see who you are, that's not going to be an indictment on your rest of your career.
No, but you can motivate you.
But you can help yourself by showing up and doing stuff the right way in the off season and showing up prepared to do that. Because make no mistake, if you're ever at a camp, someone's watching you, and someone's either checking you out and wanting to learn more information, or they're writing you off.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. Somebody's watching you all the time, whether you're at a camp, whether you're at a game, whether you're training, and they're watching what you're doing when you're not the guy up. And, that's a good way to weed people out. What are they doing? You might have a lot of talent and stuff, but I know that I make little notes, and I know coaches make little notes. What was this guy doing? Well, this guy was standing there just abusing other people. That's not necessarily a character kid. Sorry. You might be hell on wheels on, when your time comes for a drill. But if you're just a bad person and you're going to show that when you're just standing there amongst other kids or teammates, then that's going to be detrimental to you. So many kids don't pay attention. They're just unaware of what's going on around.
Yes, 100% unaware. We talked about I think maybe 2 weeks ago, being the wallflower and sitting back and waiting. It happens at our facility all the time. We do one-on-ones at the end of our groups, like with the receivers and DBs. The hungry quarterbacks take the reps. They do not wait around.
The hungry linemen do too.
The hungry linemen.
I see do it the most are the defensive linemen. Yeah. And it's like, what you just want to watch?
And so it is so easy to notice that, right? Yep. And what I think is interesting too with the quarterbacks, receivers, DBs, linemen in those scenarios, other kids that are willing to allow someone else to take their reps are not secure in what they're doing. And that's part of human nature. I get it. Like some of it's just being uncomfortable and not understanding like, hey, I need to go do that. But when a coach tells you like, hey, you need to step up and do this, and you still sit back, that there's something internally in you that does not really believe that you can do it yet. And that's something you got to work through as an athlete, right? Yeah. And you got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to really focus on the little things that are going to help you step into that situation. Because look, you can step in there and throw a duck or run a bad route or get jammed up or drop a ball, heaven forbid. And then that spills into the second one. Now you don't want to do it again because, oh my God, I had a mistake. No, the guy, the competitor, is going to get right back in there and do it again. And so I think that starts at a young age. That's why kids that train when they're a little bit younger, like middle school age, by the time they get to high school, they don't realize that they're being honed for the moment in time. Dylan Duff, great example on the show last week. He was honed for that moment when he walked out there at Lindenwood, right? I went back and made a little video of it. I found videos of him as a little kid, and then the week leading up to Lindenwood, him throwing balls at the facility over and over and over. Then he's at Lindenwood, walks on the field like he owns the joint, confident. People picked up on that. That led to offers. Had a good junior season. That led to more offers. Now he's going to K-State. It sounds really simple, but you also have to be strategic when you're younger. If you're not strategic, you're going to get blown out of the water by someone else that is.
Yep. That's huge. 2024 guys, you were talking about that. Offers are still going out. And I said when signing day happened, we're almost in March. Hard to believe we're almost in March. But I said, if you weren't signed, don't panic. More offers were still to be had between now and the start of June. Well, offers are still going on. I'm seeing guys still getting offers. And some NAIA schools are going to get some really good players who are going to pan out for them. And a lot of that has to do with a bunch of the stuff we were talking about here. Last thing before we get out of here, Brady Cook, I identified him based on a 7-on-7 performance as a 9th grader. I don't know if he was just coming into high school or he was already a 9th grader, but it was on his Chaminade team. Yep. And exactly what you were saying, placement on the ball, deep ball. Brady is like Locke, great placement on the deep passes.
Yep.
And that stood out, and just the way he carried himself and everything, and just his overall skill set. And of course, I'm sure he was working with you at the time.
Yeah, since 2nd grade.
There you go.
So, hey, you know what else I identified him as right around that age? That off-season program, our force plates, that identified him as well. The guy that runs it came in and said, "Who's Brady Cook?" He wanted to know who he was because his power metrics were off the charts as a young kid.
His what grade?
I think he was 9th going in 10th, right around that 10th.
Yeah.
So when he jumped on those force plates, it identified him as an outlier.
Yeah.
And I said, he asked, "Who is Brady Cook?" I said, he's a quarterback. You don't have any offers yet. He goes, "Oh, he will. He is a complete outlier."
I could tell it based off he became a D1 guy in my mind, that 7-on-7. And then, of course, he came to the elite combine, ran a 4.5 940, vertical jumps 30 plus inches as well. Couple of things you want to say before we get out of here, speaking of the elite combine?
Yeah, hey, registration starting to fill up. March 9th, Saturday, March 9th is the combine. It'll be from 8 to 1 out at Lou Fuse Athletic in Ur City. Definitely it's starting to fill up. So we're well over the 3/4 mark. So if you're wanting to do it, you might as well want to get in there today. Right?
Where do they go?
EliteFootballCombine.com. EliteFootballCombine.com.
That'll do it. All right. It's been fast. It's been fun. We will talk to you later. Matt, you any social stuff, or do we give that out? We
already gave it out.
We're good.
Football360.com.
You know already. See you next time.